The following program is rated U for universal audiences and is considered suitable for listeners of all ages.
This is a presentation of Dream Realm Enterprises, where dreams are our reality.
Hello and welcome to the final Q-Who of Season 2. I'm your host, Jon Russell. This is episode 22 of Season 2, and today we will be reviewing Doctor Who, The Collection, Season 2 box set, the Blu-ray release from December in the UK. The American version hasn't been released yet. I am curious about that one as to how it will size up compared to the English release. I just wonder if it will have everything included that the UK release has, because in the past, like the DVD release of The Chase, for instance, the scene with the Beatles has always been snipped out. Because of rights issues. For some reason, it's more the rights issues are a little more complicated when releasing things in America than in the UK, because in the UK the DVD release included that scene with the Beatles and in episode 1 of The Chase, and the American version, Region 1 version, did not include that. I think back during the VHS era we actually got an uncut release of that episode, but the DVD did not have that. So I kind of wonder if the Blu-ray will suffer the same fate as the DVD release did, and if that's the case, then you might want to grab the UK release, but that's up to you guys. I went ahead and grabbed the UK release just because I like the box collections that the UK gets compared to the American ones, which are considerably slimmed down and very generic. Most of the content so far has been the same. I do understand that there have been a couple of little things like certain extras not being included in some of the American stuff, again, for rights issues. I don't know what releases those were, but that's just stuff that I've heard. So you might want to check on that. You might be missing some stuff if you've been buying just the American releases. You might be missing some content. Of course, some of the content that was on the DVDs have not been ported over to the Blu-rays, and in this set, that is a case that has happened. And there have been other extras that were on DVDs that weren't on the DVDs that these pair up with that we actually do get in this release. So it's kind of a give and take sort of thing. So I think they're just trying to pair up the DVD extras with the correct stories and eras that they really are reflecting on, because sometimes they release things on DVDs as extras that didn't pertain necessarily directly to the stories. But it's just stuff that they had wanted to release and didn't get a chance to before, and so whatever DVD had room on it, they would put that DVD extra on. So they're kind of fixing that now and putting things with the correct eras. So there's a number of releases, extra features that have not been released yet, that I think probably that will be rectified in the future when, it lines up with the particular season or story that it's meant to. So I think all of that stuff will eventually get re-released, with the exception of a few things like the 40th anniversary videos and things like that. Obviously, they're not going to re-release that. At least on these particular sets, maybe in the Wilderness Years set that they keep hinting at will happen eventually. We might get a whole bunch of extras that we haven't, that haven't been released re-released on these Blu-ray sets, just because that would be a good home for that kind of stuff, and they'll want as much material to release for that Wilderness Years collection as they can get their hands on. So things like the animated BBCI or whatever you call it, the animated version of Shada that featured the Eighth Doctor, I'm sure is going to be released on that Wilderness Years set because it pertains to the Eighth Doctor and was released during the Wilderness Years. So that's probably what's going on with that. That was not released with the season 17 set, which at the time I kind of noted as, well, that's odd. Why didn't they release that? But since then, we've heard quite a bit about the possibility of the Wilderness Years set, which would include obviously the TV movie, but you can't just do a big box set with just the TV movie. So there's going to be a number of other things included on that set. And again, they're going to be looking for all the material that they can find to sort of fill that set out and to keep it in line with the rest of this run of box sets to make it worth the price you'll end up paying, of course. So I expect a lot of things like Scream of the Shalka and perhaps even Death Comes to Time and maybe the 30th anniversary Dimensions in Time and different things like that I expect will be released in the Wilderness Years set as well. I'm just speculating. I don't know, so don't take that as read. Don't take that as absolute gospel, because I have no idea. I'm speculating as we do here on these types of things. So that's all we can do at this point is speculate. And I have no idea when they would even release that Wilderness Year set. I kind of doubt it'll be this year. I figure that's a few years away. If and when it happens, I suspect it will happen because they do keep talking about it. Even Chris Chapman has talked about wanting to do it. So I suspect it's on the cards. It's just a matter of when. So it's really going to depend on when they want to do it and what they have the rights to release there. And I think there's probably a whole issue with the TV movie on that as well. And that went through a lot of rights issues for a long time before it could even be released on home video in any form, especially here in the U.S. So I'm sure that some of that will come into play when it comes to that particular set as well. But today we're here to talk about season 2 and other things. There's actually been some interesting potential news. I'm not going to call it news because we don't have any confirmation from the BBC about this, but some very exciting possibilities have been brought up. And that is the Mirror in the UK having reported that some Doctor Who's are actually going to be animated after all. We're going to get the animations back this year, so we didn't have as long of a wait after all. So it would seem by the end of the year we're going to have 2 more releases, which is wonderful, of course, and that would be The Smugglers and The Underwater Menace. Apparently they're going to animate those 2 stories. Now, we don't know if they're going to animate the entire Underwater Menace, as they have done with previous releases like The Faceless Ones and so forth, where there's existing episodes and they just went ahead and animated them anyway. We haven't heard that if they're going to do that. It did say for a DVD and Blu-ray release, so that makes it sound like it's not with a broadcaster. They found some funding apparently to continue the animations, but we don't know where that funding's from, if they're partnering up with someone else, another company, or what, or a broadcaster. It didn't, the article did not say anything about that. So it said for a DVD and Blu-ray release. So they are not, they're not going to have to animate the 2 existing episodes of The Underwater Menace, which would be episodes 2 and 3. So they may only animate episodes 1 and 4, the actual missing episodes, which I'm fine with. I don't have a problem with that. We obviously had that in the past with the Reign of Terror and the Invasion and the moon base, the 10th planet, etc. And that was fine. I have absolutely no problem going back and forth from animation to live action. And usually when I watch them, that's how I watch them anyway. I always watch the live action existing episodes instead of the animated versions of those existing episodes, because I would rather see the original material than animated versions of the existing material. But that's just me. Everybody has their own way of watching those and what they prefer. But it is very exciting news. And of course, there have been some fans that have questioned, like, why the Smugglers and the Underwater Menace? They're not the most popular choices for the fans. Obviously, Underwater Menace would be way down on most people's most wanted list. But I think it makes sense because they're both season 4 episodes. They're both season 4 stories. The Smugglers opens season 4, so it makes sense for that one to be done. And it is a cracking good story. It's one of my favorite Hartnells, to be honest with you. I'm very excited about that release in particular, because that's one that would have been fairly high on my list of wants. Not at the top, obviously. I would much rather see Marco Polo or the Savages done, but that's me. But I suspect that logistically, Marco Polo was probably not going to be the first choice because it's a much more complicated animation. Apparently, the audio isn't in as good a shape as some of the later missing stories. I'm sure the audio for the Smugglers and the Underwater Menace probably are far superior to the Marco Polo recordings that we have. So it kind of makes sense. And there's going to be a lot more to animating all 7 episodes of Marco Polo. So I can see why that wasn't the immediate choice, although a lot of fans would have preferred that here in the 60th anniversary year. But, we certainly should be happy to be getting what we're getting. We're getting 6 episodes that are missing that we didn't have to begin with, and they're at least as far as the Smugglers are concerned, a darn good story. So the Underwater Menace, it's got its moments. It's a fun romp, and it's the earliest. The 2 episodes that exist are the earliest surviving Troughton episodes. So. And it will fill that, it'll fill that gap. So that's kind of nice. And I suspect the reason why they chose that is because it's going to be between that one and the Highlanders. It would be the easier of the 2 from season 4 to be animated of the Troughton material, because again, it's only 2 episodes and it's not a historical. There's a little more to the Highlanders and animating it, though. I think it'll be done. And I think it won't be that much longer till that one's done, because if they want to release a box set of season 4, which probably is part of the thinking of this as to why they've chosen 2 more stories from season 4 rather than a story from season 3 or and one from season whatever. I think they are making an effort to fill in the gaps of Troughton's first season. So this makes perfect sense. The Smugglers makes perfect sense because that is the season opener. You wouldn't want the season opener not to be represented, in a visual way. Yes, we could have a decent telesnap recreation, but would that make a good disc on its own? I don't think the fans would go for it. So they're probably thinking the fans wouldn't go for it. So I think that's one of the motivations behind it. That's just, again, me speculating, but that's just me using my own common sense and logic and going, yeah, if I were in that position, that's how I would look at it. If I were going to try and complete a season to be released as a box set and thinking about what should we animate, then yeah, the Smugglers, which I think is going to be a fairly easy one to animate anyway, because there's not a lot of costume changes. There's a bit, but not a lot of costume changes, and it's not got a ton of characters and backgrounds. The the action takes place primarily in 2 or 3 locations through that story. So it'd be a fairly easy one compared to like Marco Polo to animate. So I think it makes perfect sense. And it is a good story. I think it's a very underrated story because it's lost. And I've listened to the soundtrack. I've listened to, I've watched the recon, and it's one of those I've really enjoyed. And I read the book back in the day, and yeah, it's one of the better Hartnells in my opinion. I've always loved the Smugglers, so I think it's a wonderful choice. Again, the Underwater Menace makes sense because it's only 2 episodes, so you're going to go for something easy to pair it up with the Smugglers. And if you're trying to finish a season, again, that makes perfect sense. So I think that's why. The Underwater Menace is far from anybody's first choice on that, but it makes sense because people say, well, why didn't they do the Wheel in Space? Or why didn't they do the Space Pirates? Or, the Space Pirates, they'd have to animate 5 episodes. The Wheel in Space, they'd have to animate 4 episodes. So for the cost itself, of animating, for the budget may not have run to do those particular stories just now. So, I think it just logically makes sense to be the Smugglers and the Underwater Menace at this point. And I think others will follow along after this. And then probably in a couple of years, we'll get a box set of season 4. So, and they will have a much more complete, season to release. And maybe by then the Highlanders will also be animated, and we'll have the entirety of season 4 to release in a nice big box set. So that's probably their thinking. So thumbs up from me if this really is happening. Again, the BBC have not confirmed or denied. The Mirrors have been pretty good about all this, though, that they've sort of leaked that information before about animated stories coming, and it's turned out to be true. So I tend to be leaning towards this is true. So I think it's exciting news. I think it really is happening, and I can't wait. Especially for the Smugglers. I can't wait to see that in animation. So it'll be. I'm sure there will be big releases on those with steelbook releases and so forth, and I've been buying the steelbooks for the other animations. I've got all of them but a couple of them, and I'll be happy to add those to my collection. And then when the box set of season 4 comes, I'll be happy to add that to my collection. We're fans, we're going to pay the money. Okay, we will get on with talking about the review for season 2 box set, William Hartnell. Now, because that's really what this episode was supposed to be about, but we had this news to come up, and it's very, very exciting, of course, about more animated episodes being done. We thought it was over for at least a while. We figured it'd be 4 or 5 years before we get any more animations, and look, we're going to end up waiting a year at most for new animations. So that is cool. That's very exciting. But season 2, I did finally get a chance to go through it. I've been going through it over the course of the last month, basically, since I received my particular box set in the mail from Amazon.co.uk. It arrived in pristine condition. A lot of people have complained about their Amazon orders arriving damaged and so forth. I was one of the lucky ones that, despite coming all the way over the pond, it did arrive in perfect condition. There wasn't a blemish on it. So, yay for me. It actually worked out. And it is a beautiful set. I love the artwork included in it, the box, the discs, the booklet, everything looks beautiful. The episodes themselves that have been restored and upgraded to Blu-ray and HD, yes, they look beautiful. They look better than they've ever looked before. The extras are kind of sparse, but we do have some nice ones in there. You kind of expect the 60s stuff not to have as many new extras, because there's only so much they can do. A lot of the people connected with the show through the 60s have sadly passed away or are not able to really talk about things, because of age and what have you. So you can kind of understand it. It was a little surprising that there wasn't a lot of new material, but we do have 2 newish interviews on there. One with William Russell, who played Ian, and Maureen O'Brien, who played Vicky. Those were nice interviews. You can certainly tell on the William Russell interview, he's getting up there in years and having a harder time remembering some things, but it was still a very enjoyable interview with him. It's about an hour or so long. Same with the Maureen O'Brien one, was about an hour long, but she had good memories about it all, and some very interesting things to say. So highly recommended for those. We had a new extra feature about merchandise from the 60s, which was really interesting, I thought. And the icing on the cake was Looking for David, which is a documentary from Toby Haydock, looking into the life of David Whittaker, the story editor for the first season and a half, something like that, of Doctor Who. And very little has been known about David Whittaker, except for his contribution to Doctor Who. So it's a fascinating documentary that it's about an hour long, that looks at his life and his career and some of the things that happened to him. There's some very surprising revelations within that documentary, so that kind of is worth the price of admission right there. It was a really nicely done documentary, and probably the shining star of the release, I think, at least as far as the extra features are concerned. I think it was wonderfully done, wonderfully handled. Toby Haydock, of course, is a joy to watch, and everyone involved did a wonderful job on that documentary. So with that and a few other little bits and bobs, yeah, the extras certainly were good. Were good. It would have been nice to have a few more, but again, this season's packed anyway, because it was a really long season, 40. I don't know the exact number, but 40 plus episodes that we got anyway. No, there wasn't an animation for the 2 missing episodes of The Crusade, but they did have telesnap recons for the 2 missing episodes, which were adequate. They worked fine. I watched them and I enjoyed them. So I think the loose cannon ones are probably a little better, but that's the case a lot, because they put a lot of work and love into those. So, but they handled it very well. They handled it very well, and they cleaned up these episodes a little bit more, and it really shows on the Crusade episode 1, which had an issue with a line running down through like the first 10 minutes of the episode anyway, which has been cleaned up as probably as much as they possibly can with the current technology, and it looks beautiful compared to what it looked like on the DVD. So they've really, really done an improvement there. So that in itself is wonderful. So I really enjoyed going through this set. I had recently watched season 2, so I didn't watch every single episode here again, but I did watch a few here and there just to see what they did as far as improving things for Blu-ray and so forth. And they really have, brought out the best possible image that we can have right now with the technology we have right now. I suspect in the future we're going to get another release of these episodes, because as restoration technology improves, and it's making leaps and bounds and improvement already with AI restoration that's happening. I've seen a few things that look pretty amazing with some tests of that stuff. So I think eventually they're going to do it again. So yes, there will be fans that moan and go, "Oh, we have to pay again." But to see these things improved and getting more extras and so forth, every time it's a joy to see the new stuff that they do for these releases. So it'll be wonderful to see these stories get even better looking as we go. So, I don't mind that if in 4 or 5 years, these are all released again on Blu-ray or whatever the format might be at the time. and see them even more improved. So I don't know. And there's also an indication in the article from the Mirror that they're actually going to colorize some of these earlier episodes, like of Hartnell and so forth. I don't know about that personally. I don't care about them colorizing. I don't feel like they need to. But for a modern audience, some people have a hard time getting into black and white. I don't quite understand that, but on one hand, I can see it. So if you're not into black and white, you probably haven't experienced 60s Doctor Who, and you don't know what you're missing. So for them to be colorizing some of them, if that really is true, then I'm all for it if it brings more appreciation to the era and those wonderful stories. If it brings a new audience in to appreciate this stuff and they can see the brilliance of it, then sure, why not? They may as well go ahead. If I think the money could be spent better animating the missing episodes rather than spending time and money on colorizing stuff that already exists. But again, if it brings a new audience to appreciate these stories, then I'm all for that. That's fine. I'll check out the colorized versions. I've seen some nice clips online that fans have done that look pretty good. So who knows? It may bring the whole thing to another level. I don't know, but I'll check it out. But I probably will still prefer the black and white versions. But I have an open mind about all that. So we'll see how it all goes and if it really happens. Who knows? Who knows? I'd certainly rather they work on colorizing like the Ambassadors of Death and get that right, or part 1 of the Invasion of the Dinosaurs. But again, that's me. Okay, but as far as season 2, the collection box set, I definitely give it 4 TARDISes out of 5. I think it's a wonderful release. It's my favorite release so far, even if the extra features are just a little sparse compared to other releases. That is understandable. So I'm not downing them for any of that, because it's the nature of the beast. There's only so much you can do. So I think it's wonderful. I think they've done a great job with these releases. I'm very appreciative of the love and time they're putting into these box sets. I look forward to the day when we have 26 full seasons and the Wilderness Years all on a shelf together. That will be a glorious day when I put the last one into place. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful way to enjoy classic Doctor Who all over again with these HD remasters. It's wonderful, and all the wonderful extra features that go along with it. So highly, highly recommended. Buy season 2. Probably best to get the UK version. Eventually they'll do a standard UK version if you don't want to spend a little extra money on the actual big box set. It will, I'm sure, come out in a standard release in a year or so. So wait for that. As far as my American friends, if you prefer the American releases that are very generic and cut down, that's fine. But I think the UK releases are far superior, and I hate to tell anybody not to buy the American versions because it supports the range over here. But I'm no longer buying the American. I bought a few to begin with, but once I saw the UK versions and what they look like, it was just like no contest. I'm buying the UK versions. So you have to make your own mind up about that. And there's still some question about the Chase episode 1 as to whether or not in the American release we'll get that Beatles clip. That one quick scene that lasts, I don't know, a minute or so with the Beatles' appearance and their performance, or Ticket to Ride, I believe it was. So whether or not they actually go the extra mile and work on getting the rights issue worked out to release it here in America on a set, we shall see. That's something I'll be interested to hear about from anybody who buys that set. So if it's supposed to come out, I think, in March. Anybody who's listening grabs that and finds out, let me know. I would love to know if episode 1 of The Chase includes the Beatles. So that'll be interesting to see. to find out. At any rate, I'm going to wrap this up now. I've been rambling on for a while. Hope you've enjoyed this season finale of Q Who. Probably will come back, considering things that are happening like the Smugglers and Underwater Menace being animated. I'm sure I'll be back to review those animations. So we will have a new season sometime later in the year. It's the 60th anniversary year, so why not? Q Who will continue at some point. So watch out, listen out for us. We will be back. But Happy New Year, everyone. Go and pick up Season 2 of Doctor Who. Support these releases and support the animations of the Smugglers and the Underwater Menace when they come out. It's very, very important to support the range so that we keep getting these things. It's just, we're blessed as fans here in the 21st century to still be getting material for a 60-year-old show. It could just as easily be that nobody cares about Doctor Who, but clearly people do. And we as fans, certainly we do. And we're blessed that they're putting a lot of love and care into these releases. So please do support the range. If you hate the range, if you just hate all this and you don't want anything to do with it, fine, don't buy it. But don't complain about it. That's something else I ask. Just don't complain. A lot of people complain about the animations. Oh, I hate the animations. Well, if you do, fine, keep it to yourself. That's just my advice. But that's one way of supporting the range so that the rest of us can enjoy these things as they come. But you got to think about everybody else, not just yourself. But that's just my advice. So thank you guys for listening. We love you. We appreciate it. And you know the drill. Until next time, please stay tuned.
You have been listening to a fan production for Dream Realm Enterprises. This is a not-for-profit program.